So in the aftermath of that lackluster finale, fans online are trying to claim that George R. R. Martin himself tried to warn us about the season in several blog posts a few weeks back, and I wanted to quickly touch on this because, while I do think there's something there, I don't believe it's as severe as people are making it out to be. And before we start, as always, please leave a like and comment, it helps out a lot, and be sure to subscribe for more House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones videos. But for now, let's get into it. Okay, so on May 24th, George put out a blog post called The Adaptation Tango, in which he criticized screenwriters and producers for trying to make an adaptation of a book their own by disregarding the source material. He even goes on to say that they never make it better. No matter how major a writer it is, no matter how great the book is, there always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do better, eager to take the story and quote-unquote improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they're saying something profound. And while I agree with what he's saying here, I find it funny because Dave and Dan, in earlier seasons of Game of Thrones, did just that, and those are lauded as some of the best televisions we've ever gotten. Dave and Dan outright changed things around, invented new scenes, and added character interactions we never knew we wanted, and in some ways, Season 1 to Game of Thrones outright improved a lot of the things from the first book to great effect and praise, George himself even coming in and wishing he'd written scenes from the show into those books. But this blog post here specifically was seen by quite a few people as being somewhat of a warning to House of the Dragon Season 2, and with the benefit of hindsight, we know that George actually liked the first half of the season. He praised it in a series of blog posts, and even going as far as to say that show Helena is an improvement on book Helena, to which I disagree, especially after episode 8, but this could be because maybe George only had access to the first 4 episodes. For those of you who don't know, many reviewers for websites and YouTube channels got the first 4 episodes in advance. In fact, we did a whole video on their reaction to those first 4 episodes, which is crazy to think considering how now, in hindsight, those people were lukewarm on the first half of the season, and it's now legitimately the best part of it. Episodes 1 to 4 really carried the show for me. And you're probably wondering, well, he is the creator of all of this, so surely they gave him the whole slew of episodes to binge before the premiere, and yeah, that's possible, but we have no confirmation on that. If anything, showrunner Ryan Condal has access to George, and they can communicate at any point, so it's possible George signed off on all of these changes, or Ryan Condal just decided to disregard George's notes and do his own thing. However, what we do know is that the decision to make this season into 8 episodes was not theirs. It was HBO coming in and cutting costs. This coming from Elio Garcia, who runs the Westeros.org website and, in the past, has worked with George extensively and even receives his own slew of episodes ahead of the premiere. According to Elio, they'd written 10 episodes before HBO came in and told the writing team to cut back to 8. There wasn't much time to make everything fit due to the writer's strike, and, well, here we are. I've been saying this all season long and even before that HBO has been on some bullshit these past few years, and this just continues to prove my point. As for the cutting back to 8 episodes, I'll go into more detail in a future video because even with reduced episodes, some of the decisions here don't add up, and those you can't blame on HBO. In the next blog post where he mentions the show, he further confirms my idea that he hadn't seen the full season at the time because he said he got a sneak peek at the first 2 episodes of Season 2. So basically George was on the same high we all were around the opening of the season, and even gave the same reaction I did, praising episode 2 as one of the best and lamenting about the blood and cheese ending not being up to par with the book, and I think that's fair. The next time George mentions the show is July 9th, where he confirms he's going on a business trip and mentions that he won't be taking part in the writing process for Season 3. Again, fans seem to think that this was George distancing himself from the series, and while I think that's stretching it a little bit, I'd love to know how involved he was for Seasons 1 and 2. The last blog post he's written as of August 7th is Here Be Dragons, where George goes into their anatomy, behaviors, and more. It was actually a very interesting blog post if you're into that type of stuff, and again, fans seem to think that George was preemptively criticizing the show because of the dragon sheep stealer. Before the premiere of the show, we got rumors from Twitter user Wake the Dragon that Rhaena will claim a sheep-stealing dragon in the Vale. People connected the dots here and realized that George, who in this blog post, might have been criticizing the show for going off script on the behavior of dragons from how he likes to write them. According to him, his dragons aren't nomadic, and they don't stray far from Dragonstone, and if they do stray, it's because their writer took them there but never stayed for too long. If dragons wandered about, Westeros would be filled with them. Connecting this back to seeing the rumors about Sheepstealer in the Vale, and you can see here where fans might have gotten the impression that George was venting his frustrations about the series. And while that's possible, George also contradicts himself. I won't go into spoilery detail here, but in the Fire and Blood history book, which is what House of the Dragon is based off, there was a dragon who decides to settle in the Reach, which is a very nice, temperate place, after the war, and never returns to the area around Dragonstone. George forgot about that, but also this blog post could just be him taking the time to give us some lore on his world, because it's not something he does very often. My idea here is that the behavior and habits of dragons in Ice and Fire aren't outright detailed, and because of that, the writers weren't aware they couldn't throw any old dragon in the Vale without breaking canon. We've seen this before with the Red Sewing episode where Condal specifically states that he doesn't know how dragons bond with people because George hasn't really written the rules for it yet. In the same blog post, George even says, and I'm quoting him, they bond with men, some men. The why and how of that and how it came to be will eventually be revealed in more detail in The Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring. So I can't blame the writers too much for doing something they didn't know they weren't allowed to do. Though you could say Condal has access to George and could just ask him these questions, but it's also possible George doesn't even know it himself either, so it's up in the air. But overall, to wrap this up and to answer this question, was George R.R. Martin trying to warn us about Season 2? No, I don't think he was, but I do believe he disagrees with some of the decisions here and there, and he's not above pointing some of it out in a polite way, like he did with Blood and Cheese. I know some people are going to wonder about him being so quiet beyond the 4th episode, and that's most likely because of his trip to the UK, and according to George R.R. Martin professor Preston Jacobs, George doesn't really do much writing while he's gone on business trips. Obviously this means while he's gone for over a month, no progress on Winds, but also too busy to really discuss the rest of Season 2. Hopefully he will chime in at some point on the decisions made during the finale, but if he does, I'm sure it'll be in a professional and polite way. Personally, I believe the problems for Season 2 lie with HBO, who I think should get the lion's share of the blame. While the writers have made weird decisions I don't agree with, such as Daemon's vision and Helena's change, I do think they did the best they could with what HBO put in front of them. The writer's strike did not help one bit, but at the same time, back then, Ryan Condal said that it didn't really affect them that much, so he either lied here to make us feel better, or the final product wasn't that much different from the full 10 episodes. But I think we can all agree on one thing. 8 episodes weren't nearly enough to do what they needed to do. However, I think we can all agree that the first half of the season is clearly the stronger half, and it's nice to see George think so too. Despite the fumbling of Blood and Cheese in episode 1 and the unnecessary trip to King's Landing with Rhaenyra and Alicent at the end of episode 3, the first half turned out pretty good. Episode 2 and 4, in my opinion, carried the whole situation, and hopefully, in the future, George can chime in on the rest of the season. I doubt he'll criticize HBO or the writers, but I do think he'll gush about episode 7 specifically because, again, the dragon-centric episode was really well done, and if anything, he'll love the designs. But guys, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a short video, but I really wanted to get to the meat and potatoes of the topic without fluffing this out too much. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and comment, it helps out a lot, and if you disagree with me and think George was trying to warn us, then definitely let me know. Also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more discussions like this in the future, but again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.